All right, Sagar, what's on your radar?
Well, I'm going to start with an apology. I'm sorry I have to keep covering this story. I'm sure some of you are even sick of hearing me talk about it, but as the media flails in the post-Trump age and new technology emerges that makes it possible to circumvent traditional power centers, we are going to see a vicious war between establishment powers and the last remaining areas of the internet, which are amenable to free thinking and free expression. As usual with these stories, it starts out with the New York Times. Funnily enough, even involves Taylor Lorenz, the lying journalist that we all got acquainted with last week. The Times story involves the new social media app Clubhouse, which is essentially a live audio discussion format. It's revolutionarily simple technology where some of the best discussions I've personally heard and even participated in are occurring right now. And as we've been covering in the last few weeks, this open and free-flowing set of discussions is anathema to the New York Times because they cannot control it. Lorenz has fired multiple shots at Clubhouse for basically refusing to bow to her and other tech journalists' attempts to police speech on the platform. But this one really takes the cake. The Times profile of Clubhouse's extraordinary rise was tweeted out from the Times with this tagline: "Unfettered conversations are taking place on Clubhouse, an invitation-only app that lets people gather in audio chat rooms." Oh my! Unfettered. That sounds terrible. That line really does give away the entire game, though, doesn't it? The Times is so up its own ass, it doesn't realize that it just gave away its central function in modern times, which is making sure all speech online is fettered. That's exactly what this entire episode is about, attacking and framing Clubhouse as a dangerous hub of misinformation, which could be dangerous, meaning, well, of course, that people need to be protected and fact-check. Oh, who does the fact-checking? That's right, the New York Times offering itself up for service. Do you see how much of a scam this all is? It's blatant guild protectionism by the Times and its reporters who have a vested interest in making sure that they can use their brand to influence different businesses into doing what they want and is good for their bottom line. There's really no other way to look at what is going on here, and it's profoundly dangerous because the problem is it might work. Think about this. If you're an app like Clubhouse, you're out there trying to raise money and gin up excitement for your product. You have one of the most influential and thriving newspapers in the country telling some well-meaning people and subscribers there is rampant misinformation on your platform. Many people trust the New York Times, millions, and they have no reason to even doubt it. So when you actually examine these claims, they are total and complete bullshit. The misinformation claims from the fact that sometimes quacks on Clubhouse say the wrong things about the COVID vaccine. Okay, that literally happens everywhere. And guess what? In the instances where it did happen, people who were part of the discussions push back. And let's see what else is happening. An easy way to rectify it is to start your own discussion and refute each one of those points. That's it. Pretty easy, actually. We don't need the Times as an interlocutor to tell us to step in and tell us what's what. Or check out this paragraph from the Times. The growth has been accompanied by criticism that women and people of color are frequent targets of abuse and that discussions involving anti-Semitism, homophobia, racism, and misogyny are on the rise. That makes it sound as if it's a hotbed of horror. Let me clue you in on something. When you have millions and millions of users, some of those are bad people. Some people, while interacting with strangers in particular, will get their feelings hurt. That's a bug of a free society and a free discussion. But my absolute favorite gripe within the Times story was this. And by the way, this is what the real gripe actually is, that some of the prominent users of the app preemptively blocked New York Times journalists, meaning they were not able to participate in some popular discussions on the app. Left unsaid that the person who's been blocked is Taylor Lorenz herself, the author of the piece, who is citing her personal beef as some evidence of a dispute that some people have with the app. On nearly every single one of their gripes with the app, nothing stands to scrutiny. All that remains is two harping reporters at the Times doing their best to pressure the app into doing what literally every single other Silicon Valley company has done: bend the knee and institute fact-checking to the standards of the mainstream media. You and I both know where that leads, who the enforcers are, and how much worse that is for free expression. I will end with the same point that I made on Tuesday, which is the reason I'm obsessed with pushing back against this type of insanity, and I hope you all are too, is I already know where it leads, where content is taken down willy-nilly with no standards, where anything that the New York Times hates is mercilessly attacked until it is blocked or taken down by pliant social media companies. As the media begins to lose its easy ratings and dollars from the Trump era, they will focus all their power on this. The key part of a guild protecting itself is not for the good times, but the bad. And it's during the times that we're entering where they're going to flex every muscle they have to make sure they can destroy any area where people dare act freely. And I urge you all to stay vigilant, and if you can, score an invite. Get on there and participate now so that if they do try and crack down, many of us will be waiting there to say, hell no. And that's what we can see, Crystal, quite clearly. I mean, you flagged this story for me about how the attention economy online for Trump under Biden has down by like 7/8 or something like that. Yeah. It's crazy. Like the amount of social media traffic and their bread and butter at the Times and more is dramatically down. And how are they going to urge people to buy subscriptions under Biden? You can't take out the big billboard in the middle of Times Square and be like, support truth and all of that. Nobody cares. People are moving on with their lives. So now they have to protect their monopoly on what is acceptable and what is not. And they're just leveraging all of their cultural and market power to do so. It has to be resisted at all costs.
So there's a lot there. Yeah. I mean, number one, I just want to say, if you cover Biden properly and you actually educate your audience on the things that matter, then there's plenty to cover.
Oh, and but they're not going to do that.
But they're not, right. So I just want to be clear, the Biden administration actually is interesting and actually is significant. And there's a lot to talk about there unfolding in the Republican Party, unfolding in the Democratic Party, unfolding with their priorities, things that we cover on this show. But they don't know how to do that properly, and they haven't prepped their audience to care about policy, to care about the distinctions within the party, to care about actually holding Biden to account. So they're left, empty-handed. CNN writing stories about Biden's bedtime.
Literally.
Newsweek doing a whole write-up on his Mario Kart exploits over the weekend, right? Yeah. So that's one piece of it. But the other piece of this that's really the central part is, so after the January 6th Capitol riots, there was a whole crackdown on Parler, right? And not only is Parler taken down, but their Amazon pulled their web services.
They're effectively
huge outcry, right? And the allegation was Parler was central to planning and plotting these riots. Well, actually, if you analyze it, there was much more posting and much more organizing that was happening on Facebook.
Yes, Facebook.
So why didn't Facebook face the same level of backlash? Well, it's because they feel like they have an in at Facebook. They feel like they have somewhat of an ally there. They feel like Zuckerberg has done some of what they want. And so there aren't unfettered conversations happening on Facebook the way they're happening in these other spaces that they don't have control over. And so that's what the gripe is really about. And the fact that they used in that tweet the phrasing unfettered conversations are happening on Clubhouse, it just gives away the entire game. That's what they're terrified of, is having any sort of space that they can't control. And by the way, and we've talked about this before, but I think it's worth underscoring, the way that Clubhouse works, these are just audio-only conversations that are happening. It's not like Twitter or Facebook where things are getting shared and going viral, and then if
there's no
it's
such
wrong,
thing as virality there.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so if something is wrong, it's getting propagated, and then the fact check to try to clean it up is viewed by many less people. That's not a thing on Clubhouse. This is just a place for people to gather and have conversations. You can't share it. It can't go viral. There's no this is going to mass spread some terrible idea across the country. So even if they were right that this was an app, which they're not, by the way, but even if they were right in their sort of vague insinuations that this is a horrible app for horrible people, it basically stays right there. And look, you can't ultimately in a free society prevent people from having terrible views and saying bad things sometimes. You just have to accept that is the part of the price of living in a free society.
Of course. And this is something Glenn actually said to me, which was so perfect. He said, one is tempted to wonder how they could possibly not realize how this sounds in relation to unfettered.
True.
Until one recalls it is in this precinct that this mentality is the prevailing one, so it sounds normal. So you have to think about being in the headspace of a Times reporter and of their audience to think that having an unfettered conversation is bad.
Right.
That sets off all of your, learned language and learned behaviors around what we think about free society and not. And that is the fundamental authoritarianism to all of this, which is they want to go after and they want to shut this stuff down. And we just have to resist it because it's already come to YouTube. It has already come to Twitter. I mean, long been there for Twitter, long been there for Facebook and more. And, in the emerging space, I mean, this is a brand new app. It's 11 months only old. If they can get in there on the ground floor before it hits 100 million users or something like that, then they could kneecap it before it even has the chance to become a thing.
Yeah, and just to, again, underline why this is so significant and about so much more than this one app, you only have to look at the fact that they also wrote articles about, like, Signal and Telegram.
Yes, exactly.
These encrypted apps where these unfettered conversations are having. We can't have that. There was another article about, like, how podcasts are unregulated. People are getting around the rules on these podcasts. They're actually able to say what they want. So any space, Substack has come in for
Bingo.
attack.
Any
space
they've come under the wire,
that they don't feel like they have their hooks into to try to control, they're going to smear and demonize and try to censor.
Yeah,
That's
exactly
what's going on.